This video is a review of numbers 1 through 14 on your spring final exam review. Remember that your spring final exam is the second and last major test grade for the 6 weeks and cannot be retested. So even if you fail, the failing grade is the one that will go into the grade book so that we can calculate your 6 weeks average before you leave for the summer. All right, number 1. Which statement about these real-world situations is not true? So just to help us keep true versus not true together, next to each answer choice as we read them, we're going to write true or false next to them. Letter choice A says a $100 check deposited in a bank can be represented by a positive 1,000. And that's true. A deposit is positive, while a withdrawal is your negative, taking money out. So that would be a true statement. A loss of 15 yards in a football game can be represented by negative 15. That would be true. A loss is a negative value. A temperature of 20 degrees below zero is negative 20. That's true. Above zero would be positive. A submarine diving 300 feet underwater can be represented by positive 300. That's false. That should be a negative 300 if they're underwater. So that would be my false. And I'm looking for the one that's not true. So true wouldn't work, true wouldn't work, true wouldn't work. I'm looking for the answer choice that would be false, the one that is not true. So the answer for number 1 is D. Number 2, which expression is modeled below? Remember when we're modeling integers on the number line, we always start at 0. And you can see that starting at 0, it goes to the number -3 first. So I know my first number has to start with -3, which means C automatically has to be my answer. But let's go ahead and look at my second answer. I then move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units to the right, meaning we added a positive 6. So -3 plus 6 is correct. If we would have added a -6, we would have continued going to the left. Number 3, which expression results in the greatest value? So we're going to solve all 4 of these answer choices and then determine which one of them has the greatest value. -6 times -2, 6 times 2 is 12 because they both have the same sign. My answer is positive. 5 times -3, 5 times 3 is 15 because they have different signs. My answer is negative. 8 minus -5. When we add the opposite, we end up with 8 plus 5, which is positive 13. 48 divided by -6. 48 divided by 6 is 8 because they have different signs. My answer is negative. So I'm looking for the value with the greatest value, and that would be C. 13 is greater than all of the other values. Number 4. Suppose you rub a balloon through your hair to make the balloon stick to the wall. There are 17 positive charges on the wall and 25 negative charges. What is the combined charge? So remember, whenever we're adding a positive and a negative, we really subtract their values. Because remember, 17 of those positives are going to cancel out 17 of my negatives. I'm still going to have some negatives left over. We just have to determine how many negatives will be left over. 25 minus 17, I cannot subtract 7 from 5, so you need to borrow. 15 minus 7 is 8, so your answer would be -8 because you still have negatives left over. Some of them got canceled out, but you still have negatives left over. Remember, you take the sign of the larger value. So -8 is your answer. Be really careful on your test whenever you take it because you'll see answer choices like you see here, +8 and -8. So it would be up to you to determine which one would be the correct sign for that question. The next question says that winter months in Wisconsin, I'm trying to move this out of the way. Winter months in Wisconsin are brutal. One particular morning, the wind chill temperature at 7 a.m. was -2 degrees. So at 7, it's -2. The day got even colder and later read -14 degrees 4 hours later. So we go to 8, 9, 10, at 11 o'clock, 4 hours later, is when we're at negative 14 degrees. What is the change in temperature per hour? So we know that over this 4-hour period, it got colder and colder and colder and colder and colder by 12 more degrees. It dropped 12 more degrees. Well, if it dropped 12 degrees over a 4-hour period, we can divide by 4 to determine how much it dropped per hour, because that's what the question's asking. How many degrees is it actually dropping per 1 hour? And when you divide that out, that comes out to negative 3. The negative sign just representing that it was dropping and not rising. It wasn't getting warmer. Number 6, which line on the grid below contains the ordered pair 7, negative 5? Remember, your first number tells you where to go on your x-axis. So I want to go across to positive 7, and then I want to go down to negative 5. So there's that point, and you can see that falls on line Z. So the answer choice there would be D. Number 7, 8, 9, and 10 all have to do with these shapes on the coordinate plane that you see. It first says what shape is in quadrant 2. So you need to know which quadrant is which. Remember, like the letter C, we start quadrant 1, go left to quadrant 2, down to quadrant 3, and then back around to quadrant 4. I'm going to go ahead and erase this C because we're going to need to look at this coordinate plane. So what shape is in quadrant 2? Well, quadrant 2 is the upper left-hand quadrant, so that would be a rectangle in that quadrant. Name a point inside the triangle. So your answers can vary here. I'm just going to pick a random point right here, which would be 0, because I'm not having to go left or right, and then negative 2, because I'm going down to negative 2. Again, that's not the only correct answer. There's multiple ones. List a point that falls on a vertex of the rectangle. Vertex meaning one of these 4 points, one of these 4 corners. So you can list one of them. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to go ahead and just choose this one right here. So that would be over to negative 4, over to negative 3, up to 6. So negative 3, positive 6 would be just one of the possible answer choices there. Which of the following is a point inside of the rectangle? Negative 5, positive 7. Negative 5 up to positive 7 would be right here. Well, yep, that's in the rectangle, so let's say that would be our answer choice. Just to kind of save some time, we're going to pretend for a second that we worked through B, C, and D and found that none of those were in the rectangle. But on your actual test, you're going to want to make sure that you go through all the answer choices. Even if you think you found the correct answer at A, double check and go through B, C, and D just to make sure, because you could have made a mistake and A really could not be the right answer. Number 11, label each quadrant appropriately. So like we just said, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it says when plotting the coordinate negative 4, 2.5, what quadrant would it be located in? So negative 4 would be over to the left, up 2.5 would be up. So I'm somewhere up here in quadrant 2. So that's what the question was asking, is if we were to plot that point, which quadrant would it be in? Number 12, a bicycle riding group has planned a 5-day trip as shown below. If the cycling group rode this trip twice, once to determine each day's distance and once for the actual ground trip. So they travel day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they travel again day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's asking what's the distance each person rode in all. So we obviously want to add them up to figure out how much they rode one way and then double that because they rode that amount twice. It's completely up to you whether you want to work this as fractions or decimals, or whether you prefer working in fraction form or decimal form. I'm going to go ahead and just show you guys in decimal form. It's a little bit easier and takes a little bit less time. 26.5 is already in decimal form. 40.2 is already in decimal form. 50 and 1/5, if you convert 1/5 to a decimal, that's 0.2. So 50.2 is the exact same value. 28 and 3/4. 3/4 is the same thing as 0.75, so that would be 28.75. Now, because I had two numbers out behind my decimal there, I'm going to want to create 0 placeholders on the others just to keep everything nice and lined up. And then the last one's also already in decimal form. And then when you add all of those up, what you end up getting is 181.15. Now, remember, that's only one direction. That's only going once. Well, they do it a second time. So if you double that, if you want to figure out how much they rode in all, you end up getting 362.3 miles. So make sure you're reading the question and the information in your word problem very carefully, because you could have very easily left your answer with the 181.15 and forgotten to have doubled that. You got to remember, they went that distance twice. Number 13, there was an error. This should say kilometers, not meters. A nautical mile is a unit of length used in navigation at sea. 1 nautical mile is equivalent to 1.852 kilometers. So let's read what they just said. They said 1 nautical mile is equivalent to 1.852 kilometers. I'm just creating myself a little proportion here. Remember, one side of the proportion, one ratio is always just the facts. It's straight from the problem. Two ships, X and Y, are separated by a distance of 3.8 nautical miles. What is the distance in kilometers? So they told us 3.8 nautical miles. If I have nautical miles on top on my left, I need nautical miles on top on my right as well. So that's 3.8 kilometers, and this is the piece that we're solving for. So like a proportion set up, we would cross multiply 3.8 times 1.852, and when you do that, you get 7.1302 kilometers. You will not have a calculator on your test, so make sure that you feel very comfortable multiplying multi-digit and numbers. And the last one for this video, you can find the rest of the review worked out on a separate video. The scissors to the side make up what type of angles? Supplementary or complementary? So it's important to remember these two terms. A couple ways that you can remember: C comes before S in the alphabet. 90 comes before 180 on the number line. So complementary is when two angles added together, their measurements equal 90 degrees, whereas supplementary is the sum of two angles that equals 180. So when we're looking at these two scissors, it looks like they're on this blade of the scissors right here. And here's basically my angle. So forming a straight line, a straight angle, they would be supplementary to one another. And if we know that supplementary angles equal 180, one added, I know one of the angles is 115.9. So I can subtract that from 180 to find the missing angle value. Remember, when you add and subtract decimals, they have to be lined up. They have to. Not necessarily when you multiply, but when you add and subtract, they have to. So if needed, create your 0 placeholders. When you subtract this, you get 64.1 would be the answer. Great. And that's it for this video.